Hi everyone who's joining. I can see that we've still got a few people ready to join, so I might wait a couple of minutes as we get a few more people registered and online before we kick things off with Jennifer. So yeah, great to see you all joining the call. I might give it maybe a couple more minutes and then we should probably kick off. While people are joining, I might just let the participants that are already logged in, if you've got any questions for Jennifer, feel free to use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screens and you can submit questions and we will keep an eye on them and I can ask the questions throughout the session as well. So feel free to submit any questions you might have.
Yeah. Good morning. Am I allowed to talk? I'm
Yeah,
wondering if I should follow on from talking until we're all here. Or, hi, everyone. It's nice to do this online with you all. I was just saying to Mel over there that I'm in Beijing right now, and it's been a really, really odd few days. We had huge snowfalls when it's supposed to be spring. And then yesterday, obviously, I don't know if you've heard, we had a plane crash here where 132 passengers died instantaneously on board, and it was a huge shock for many of us here. So the mood here is very odd. COVID is in full swing. I was telling Mal that my own business once again has been hit because we're an offline business. So it's really interesting to be doing kind of this sort of conversation because I've been back in China now for 10 years, but I've never kind of experienced massive changes. And I mean, none of us have really in our kind of working lives. But China is going through lots of changes and lots of things are happening, especially in the last few years politically. And it's been really interesting as an entrepreneur here during this time. So it's great that I can share this with you all, my own experience. I know Mel's prepared lots of really good questions, and it's kind of, because it's quite a small group, it'll be great, I think, yeah, if I could say things that give you some content that is really applicable to what you guys need also. So I don't know if this is interactive now, if I'm able to maybe get the people that are listening. Yeah, I wonder if, I mean, obviously people are here because they're interested in China. So are you thinking of coming into China to start a business, or do you already have a business in China, or it's just general interest that you want to understand what is happening here? It would be great if maybe you could type out whether you're a business owner or you just kind of general interest, just so then I can gauge what kind of information to share. It's a lot going on as a business here, so.
Sounds great. Okay, well, I think we should officially kick off, given it's 1:05. People will probably keep joining throughout the session, so let's kick things off. So, kia ora koutou katoa. Thank you so much for joining our world-class New Zealand speaker series today with Jennifer Ma. My name is Mel. I am Kia's Global Director of Partnerships and Engagement, and it's really great to be hosting these events with our amazing world-class New Zealanders around the world. For those who aren't aware, Kia was founded over 20 years ago by Sir Stephen Tyndall and Professor David Teese, who understood that our offshore Kiwi are crucial to keeping New Zealand connected to the world. Since then, we've continued to grow and nurture this community and now have almost 500,000 Kiwi across 185 different countries. Our world-class New Zealand network is an important part of this community. They are a unique group of people involved in world-leading and inspiring work that also creates positive change. They are passionate advocates for Aotearoa and actively give back to our people and our businesses. So this series was created to not only highlight their incredible stories, but to inspire Kiwi with global aspirations to push the boundaries of their own business goals and expectations. We are hugely appreciative of our world-class New Zealanders who make the time to share their insights, their experience, and their personal networks to help others achieve the same success. I know there are a few world-class New Zealanders on this webinar today, so I'd like to acknowledge all of you and say a big thank you for your continued support of Kia. And finally, a bit of housekeeping. As I mentioned earlier, if you have any questions for Jennifer during the session, or if there's anything you're keen to discuss, it is an interactive session, so please use the Q&A section at the bottom of your screens and we'll have some time for Q&A. So now I'd like to welcome our speaker, Jennifer. Jennifer is the founder of Little Oasis Group, a family lifestyle and education business, which is based on the New Zealand principles of education and play. Her company operates 15 family clubs across 11 locations in China. Recent changes to China's education policies have meant that she has had to pivot her business model to keep up with changes regulating education providers from charging for tutorial-based services. And as Jennifer mentioned today, it's still a changing marketplace with so many different things affecting her business model today. So we're here to chat with Jennifer about her journey, what's next, and also the opportunities for New Zealand businesses in a very important market, which is China. So thank you, Jennifer, for joining us. I'll kick things off with a couple of questions, and I'll keep an eye on what's happening in the chat as well, and I'll bring some questions in as well. So can you tell us a bit more about your business journey in China? Where did the idea for Little Oasis come from?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. It came to me, I think, I always said that Little Oasis was kind of this, this combustion of three things. So I personally have a background in marketing, having worked at L'Oreal for many years in Australia. And then I came to China in 2012. I moved back here was my husband, who was moved back here for work with our then 1-year-old. He's now 11. And I was going through, my own experiences as a full-time mother. So having that transition in my own personal life. And then having kind of this entrepreneur spirit that's always been in me. And I just saw this huge opportunity here where most of the kind of school age services and products here that were offered were purely educational, as in they were based on a classroom environment, even for little kids. And I just wanted a sense of play, a sense of community for my child, where I can meet other like-minded families. It was more of a lifestyle concept than an education concept to start with. It was really a concept for women, for moms to meet each other. And that's kind of how I started, because I couldn't find anywhere to go with my then 1.5-year-old. And then we kind of researched the Chinese kind of early education market space, looked at different kind of ways we could do this. And we decided that rather than doing a nursery concept, which is more regulated, we would go under kind of a playground space. So what we have right now is we call ourselves the education lifestyle brand. So it's really offline spaces between 500 to 2,000 square meters, so fairly big. And you can think of it as a combination of a really beautifully designed playground with a private lounge. So we kind of took the concept of the Soho House and these clubs. So prior to moving back to Beijing, I was living in London. There were lots of these kind of private clubs that I was not in access to. But the idea of having these hubs, or your first class lounges, it was kind of this idea, but for families, everything built. We call our central space a living room. So everything is built that is really, really safe for kids, really fun, but actually it's for the purpose of raising kids. So it's really for the adults. And that's where we kind of hit this jackpot where no one else was doing. And then we integrated Te Whāriki into the system, which is the early childhood New Zealand system that we use based on, family and community, holistic development, empowerment. And those concepts were very progressive. This is 7 years ago. So it kind of caught this very niche market and we were positioned in Beijing, which is kind of the most premium location, which was eco-friendly location, an art gallery at the time. So it kind of just, everything kind of came together to create this very different brand that was educational, but based off a lifestyle concept that captured the attention of kind of an elite, I could say, customer, or lots of expats joined us. You know, you can have coffee there, you can meet other families. It was very different, and we've kind of been doing that since.
Fantastic. So kind of following on from that, can you talk a bit more about the opportunities and also the challenges you faced along the way over the last few years, and also what's happening right now?
Yeah, I mean, opportunity is the fact of the population. It's huge population base. So whether you're doing products or services, the population base is so different. As an example, we have 3 stores we have 4 locations in Beijing at the moment, and 3 of them are located within probably 3 Ks of each other. So they're very close to each other, and yet we can still run a really good business. So that's China opportunities for sure, as population. And then there's still a lot of, you know, interest in businesses and growth from VCs and private equity and personal funds. So because it's still a growing market. So I think that's probably a big opportunity, and just a changing demographic here. You're coming into an era of China where the main spending powers are with the millennials. Yeah. They are just so different from kind of where China was even 10 years ago. I think some of the opportunities are because China is changing so rapidly. I've been in China for 10 years, and I feel like I've had kind of 3 eras of China already. Kind of the first 3 years while I was here, kind of pre-Didi, Uber time. And then you have this huge avalanche of tech companies like your Uber type, you know, WeWork type, that all came in. And then it's post-COVID or COVID time. It's also changed the political and kind of landscape here also. So the opportunities are still there. I think the main challenges are also very clear, especially in the last few years. So COVID aside, I think some of the main challenges especially for businesses, founders and businesses from outside of China, is just understanding the market and really being able to execute on your vision that is appropriate for the local demographic. Because I think gone are the days when you can be a New Zealand brand and or any foreign brand, especially New Zealand. You know, we have a great image here, so that's a plus for us. But the problem is, gone are the days when you can just be a New Zealand brand because it's a clean, green, eco-friendly product. And be a success here. That's past. That window has sailed. So now I think the opportunities are still around, but the messaging needs to be more targeted. I think for the businesses and for the entrepreneurs themselves, they need to understand whether China is a long game. You know, what is it here? Is it a China business or is it an export business? I think you have to think about the different distribution channels, and obviously it depends on what your service and products are. I think there's still lots of opportunities here for brands and businesses, not just to export, but to work in collaboration with Chinese partners. The main challenge definitely is also politically, as I've experienced in the last year, when we had the double reduction policy in education, which meant that some of the biggest players that had listed companies in the US basically had to stop their business from providing any tutoring, which is anything inside a classroom. It happened overnight. So that was really odd. You know, when you're in business school, you learn about the past business, you know, your political change, social change, economic change, and how that could impact the business. And you go, okay. And it wasn't until I really experienced what happened here last year that I realized, wow, okay, this happens. And it's overnight. Businesses had to either pivot, close, lots of business closed down. Even though my own business, we're not a tutoring business, but we are in the education industry. So as such, we have been affected. We're kind of on the peripheral of it. You know, COVID aside, COVID obviously has also affected us. I was just telling Mel, we've had to shut again for the last week because China's still under zero elimination policy, which is very disruptive you, as a small business, you can only kind of carry that for a few years before you kind of go, okay, this is, we got to keep changing, keep reinventing. And that's what we have been doing for the last few years. So we've been pivoting into a more play-based model. So before we were focusing on the educational part alongside the lifestyle part. We have our own F&B team, we have our own play team, we have our own team that do kind of lots of outdoor play, etc. But that was kind of accessory to the core business, which is our club inside these spaces. But now we've kind of turned that upside down, and we're saying, okay, actually, we're more about play, we're more about F&B, we're more about taking them out somewhere else, to the galleries, to the museums, and our core kind of education part. Let's just keep that as it is. And we're, yeah. So it's been really interesting having to make all these adjustments.
Yeah, I mean, it's part and parcel with running a business these days. You just have to kind of quickly adapt and change direction each month, each year, as things develop with COVID and other global issues that are happening. I actually have a question that was submitted by someone earlier as well, just around your business, and they wanted to know, how did you find this opportunity, this gap in the market, and how much planning was involved in getting your business up and running?
How did I find it? Because I couldn't find it. So I think the opportunity, or this product, because it never existed in this form, I think it took me a while to figure out what it was, but I knew what I was looking for as a mother. So I think having that, you know, many founders, especially kind of female founded businesses, are based on a personal need. And that's very evident with Little Oasis. I mean, everything is built in the beginning based off kind of what I found was lacking in the other brands that were providing these services here. How long? It took 3 years. It took that long because my previous background was in marketing, and prior to that, law. I've never worked in China. I didn't have any local connections. Didn't quite know how to do this here. You know, I don't have a brand. Don't have any. So I started off actually just hosting play groups in my own apartment with other moms, and then did lots of events in my own house, and was basically because I was raising my kids. My one kid, and then I had another one, and then when I had my second one, I saw that, okay, I still need this place. I can see in my head, and yet I cannot find it. And it's not just me, because I have all these moms. So I had kind of a personal network of mothers that I've kind of built relationships with over the last few years, and I keep doing these roundtables with them. So I would do one probably every 6 months, because they never went away. And I think that was when, after kind of 2 or 3 years, I was like, okay, this is not going away, this idea that I have, and still no one's providing this product or service. And something kind of happened once when I went back to New Zealand, and my kid was like, why can't I have this? You know, we were walking to Mission Bay, and some woman said hi to me, just very friendly, and I said hi back. And my kid was like, why doesn't anyone say hi to us in China? And it made me kind of realize that the environment your child grows up in is so important to who they are as a person. And that kind of kicked me in the ass. And I went, okay, I got to do this. You know, I got to do this, because there's nothing else. There's no product or service that can provide kind of this vision that I have for what families could get, you know, as a place to raise their kids. So the process of then actually coming up with the final product took about a year, where I kind of figured out, okay, I need to know how to design a place that's never been designed before. So I kind of I just cold emailed probably, I don't know, 100 different people. It's kind of my specialty, cold calling. Architects, I talked to architects. I met a lot of educators that were very, very, that really helped me shape the educational component of it. I emailed about 10 American kids museums, because they were very good at doing these interactive kids places. And one replied, and I actually had a phone conversation, and that was probably the most amazing conversation, because it really shaped the way I view spaces and how you curate spaces. So then as these components were coming together, we figured out the funding, and then I think it's luck. I think luck is, opportunity meeting preparation. And it just at that time, Parkview Green, which is our first location, was kind of this amazing mall that was built to be the first eco-friendly mall in China, was platinum lead certification, the first mall with air purification. And the owner is the biggest art collector in China. So in the space, he has all these real life, Dali sculptures and these amazing artwork. And I just thought, this is it. And it just so happened they were looking to pivot into doing something premium for families. So I think it was just meeting that opportunity. And then once we had the first one, it took me about 2 years to figure out what I was actually doing. So running their business day by day as the store manager in-house. And then in 2007, so that was 2015 we opened. 2017, we received our first round of funding, which is when we scaled.
Yeah. Amazing. That's quite a journey. Like you said, it's all that planning, but then also the stars aligning in terms of that right venue. It's that serendipitous moment that we all are looking for. So kind of talking about, how you had the group of women to kind of be your research group, for example, that you talk to regularly. We know that's something that you're passionate about. And you shared with me earlier about something you call returnships, which is getting women back into work at your centres. Can you talk a little bit more about that in terms of giving back to the community, giving back to women?
Absolutely. So I think the well-being and empowerment of women is something that is at the core of what I'm passionate about. Even Little Oasis, I say it's wrapped around in this like kids concept, but the core of it is really for the mother who's finding parenting really difficult and just feeling lonely, kind of the journey I went through. And as we know, with parenting, the woman bears most of the work. And I experienced that myself also. I was a full-time mom for 4 years. And over the last few years, you see how once the woman take the step out of the professional work field, it is really difficult for her to return, especially in China, because you're facing a population that keep generating a lot of new graduates. And the working hours and the environment aren't necessarily very flexible or friendly towards mothers who have pickup responsibilities, etc. So a part of what I've been doing for the last few years, especially during COVID, when the extra burden of child rearing and working kind of really fell down on the shoulders of women, came to me, was we started offering returnships. So think of them as internships, but for a woman who's maybe had a gap on her CV. And that's the main problem, is when she's taken time away from work, she will have a gap on her CV. And for any HR recruiter, that is a gap. Even though I know that during that gap, you build a lot of other skills. So there are two things that's happening. One is that we offer opportunities on more flexible hours. We have different positions that allows within the 3 months for the woman to fill up her CV. So whether that's in marketing, in sales, services, etc., accounting, HR. But the other thing is, and I think that's more important, it's really someone giving them a chance to just take that first baby step back into the workforce. And I had that experience myself, when I was thinking about when my second one was 2 and, Little Oasis was there, but it wasn't quite there. I was like, maybe I should go back to work. You don't have the confidence because you go, well, I've not worked for a few years. Well, can I do this? Can I? So all it takes, I think, sometimes is someone giving you an opportunity, a baby project.
Yep.
And you're building that kind of confidence back up, and you exposing yourself into another world beyond just kids and diapers and mummy talk, which is all great, but it's different from having to work. So we've been doing that. The idea came to me during COVID, but we started implementing it in last year. We've had 6 of these women come through to us, and 2 of them are now full-time. So after the internship, obviously some of them are like, okay, yeah, I don't actually like working, or I want to do something else. This is great. Some of them go back to studying, but we actually had 2 that ended up staying with us full-time. and they've been amazing, just amazing. So this is something I'm hoping we as a small business can continue to do, but more importantly, this is something we can grow. So we're talking to different people about having other, so the bigger businesses I've realized cannot really do this. It's just too difficult. Even though we've talked to a lot of kind of PWCs and your big companies, it's too challenging for them. Whereas a small business, you can be more flexible. So we're looking at getting other businesses on board to kind of provide the structure for how you would do this. It's really good value for money for the businesses as well. That's what I'm saying. You're basically giving someone who's super experienced, super organized for bugger all. Like it is so good. And they are bringing skills from cross industries. And I think that's part of the success with Little Oasis is that I did come from another industry completely. And those fresh eyes are super important for any business. And for us, it allowed us to have that.
Yeah, that's amazing. It really is, like you said, you just need to give them that chance to get back into the workforce again and be able to shift gears from being stay-at-home mum to back into the workforce. And sometimes all it takes is someone giving you an opportunity and a chance to switch your brain back into gear.
Absolutely.
So I was wanting to touch back on the kind of family children market in China. We know that it's worth almost US $700 billion annually, and parents spend almost half of their income on their children. So it's a really big market in China. So can you kind of share some of the trends that you're seeing in this space right now and into the future that New Zealand should be aware of?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think in the last 10 years that I've been here, the market has shifted and changed tremendously because the new generation of millennial parents, they are in their consumer habits much more like a Western consumer now, especially the mom who, for the majority of this money that's spent on a child in the early years, so from say 0 to 10 even, the woman is the decision maker. The woman is the main decision maker. So it's really for any brand looking to seek a win here, it's you have to kind of understand who your consumer really is, right? It could be the child that's wearing the clothes, that's eating the food, that's enjoying the service, but the person who's actually spending the money is the mom. So that makes it both interesting and challenging because you've actually got two consumers here who have very different needs. The main thing with this generation of Chinese consumers is that I've seen, because of the sophistication of the supply chain that has been built up in China over the last few years, this kind of new generation of Chinese brands, local brands that have been built up here locally are very good. From their kind of marketing to their branding to their quality of product. And obviously because they're local, they have a price advantage. So the way foreign brands are entering into the market and how they play the game, I think needs to change and shift. We actually have a very, very small retail division that we built up a few years ago, predominantly selling Western brand kind of mummy baby goods, food, clothing, toys, etc. And what we've seen the last few years is that the shift is happening where the consumer is favoring or no longer perceive the Chinese brand as being worse off in quality, especially when it's a generalized product. And I'm not talking about milk powders or Despre here. Okay, so we're not talking about these bigger kind of players. We're kind of talking about your small, medium-sized businesses. I think the main kind of, if you are a brand looking, or if you're someone looking to help New Zealand businesses understand China, if you're someone looking at looking at the China market and going, we should get our product here, there's probably a few things that's very important. I think it's having a very clear positioning. So that positioning, you can't just say it's a premium positioning or it's a clean positioning, where we're clean. That is, I think, clean, New Zealand exported, those are kind of the backbone of what your product probably has already. And you need to develop on that. what is it that you're offering Chinese customers, and what is it that they value?
Yeah.
You're coming to a generation where there's a lot more personalization. There's a lot more kind of, they want to be their own person. They want that freedom. They want to raise their kids in a different way. They're looking at education in a different way.
Yeah.
They have access to Western information. You know, they have access to so much information, and they've all traveled, most of them. So obviously, I'm also talking about China is huge. China is huge geographically, and it's huge as a demographic. So when my kind of area of expertise is more in the middle upper echelon of the Chinese consumer market, which is probably more well positioned for New Zealand brands rather than your mass consumer market. Yeah.
That makes sense. I've actually got a question here from one of the attendees. It's a question, I'll just read the question. As China's birth rate drops, what are the future possibilities for New Zealand businesses who are interested in this market? Do they need to look away from tier 1 and into tier 2 or tier 3 cities to find future demand for New Zealand products?
Yeah, I mean, Ethan, China birth rates drops, but still huge base. You're still getting, hundreds of millions of babies. So in some ways, as a service provider, and it really depends on what your product is. So I don't know if you're happy to say what your product is. I think it really depends on the product. I think there are still huge purchasing power if it's a product or a service. I think as a general product, your tier 1 cities are still going to be where your consumers are going to be. And yeah, so if you want to type what your product is, that may be helpful. And definitely tier 2 and tier 3 cities, you've got these, they call them 新一线, so new first tier. So you've got your first tier, you've got your first tier potential, your cities like Chengdu, and then you've got your second tier. So you got these middle echelons. And geographically, the north is very different from the south. It is even for a business like ours. So we have stores scattered across 11 cities, and how we communicate our own service locally is different. Obviously, our values don't change, but for example, up north in a certain city, we kind of talk about it as kind of this Western elite early childhood environment. Down in Chengdu, where it's more relaxed, we actually don't talk about the relaxed part so much. We talk about the relaxed part more, and we don't talk about the education part so much. We actually have to mold it to the different geographic locations, which is also very interesting and makes it difficult, I think, for New Zealand companies to get in here. So I think for China, when you're talking about tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, then I'm presuming you're talking about you having a presence offline. So if you are a product, then it is different from what I'm doing, which is mainly a service-based business. A product-based business has to be online. I mean, you can have offline presence, but the shopping habits and consumer behavior here is completely changing online. And there are so many different platforms, and that's a whole nother story. So to succeed in China, you have to play the social media game. And it is their rules. There's a lot of spend. So I think that's one thing you have to be very careful of. You can drop a lot of money into nothing, because there are players that are dropping bucket loads more. So it varies, right? It's what is your product? Who are you targeting? I think there's still opportunities in first tier cities because the purchasing power is here. And there's still lots and lots of babies. Like compared to kind of a New Zealand demographic, right? So like I said, we have 3 shops near, like within 3 km of each other. And if we didn't have COVID, they would all still be generating very positive cash flow. And because they are children. Yeah, they are still children.
Yeah. So kind of touching on that, I can see a couple of other questions here about your children's beverage line. Do you want to talk a little bit more about this kind of spin-off that you've built? You mentioned a children's beverage. How did you come up with the idea, and how did you create it with Little Oasis?
Yeah, so we've actually been looking at creating our own product line for 5 to 6 years. Oh, I've been thinking about this because we keep selling these different things. And I know I have a captive clientele and I know their behavior really well. We have a great brand here in China. We're probably really, really well known now in kind of the upper premium market. There's a lot of trust with the brand. But I couldn't quite figure out what it is that we wanted to do as an SKU or kind of what we wanted to do. So I was kind of during the last few years where, because we have a playground business as part of overall concept, we sell these snacks and food and drinks from other brands. And there's this one drink that we really sell a lot of, which is kind of this bottle with this like sugary bad water. I call it bad water because it has coloring and additives. And I keep saying to myself, I don't want this. Can we sell something else? Can we place healthier options next to this? And, you know, they put the water, they put the juice, and they won't get rid of this because they're saying, well, people want this. And even if you put the water and juice next to it, people still want to buy this. And I looked at it and I said, it's basically because it's in a kid-friendly packaging. It looks cute, right? It looks fun, it looks cute, but it's crap. And I keep getting really angry that I was selling this and I didn't want to be selling this. I got really mad. And I keep saying, okay, I want to do my own juice. I want to do my own drink. But I think the idea of it was just so different from what I could do or what my know-how was. And I couldn't quite find the right supply. I don't know. It wasn't the right timing. And then last year, I think, you know, it was just so clear that we needed also as a business to have another thing to build off, to leverage off. And I just kept going back to this drink. So kind of put, you know, my figuring a hat out together and I started figuring out how to do this. So the great thing with China is that there are many supply chain potentials and labs that you can work with. I just had to go and really ask and go to food shows and trade fairs. And then we managed to find a lab in Shanghai where they were able to work with me on a formulation in small batches to test this concept. And the concept is very simple. As a mom, I want my kids to be hydrated with water, but sometimes they don't want to drink water. They want something sweet, but I don't want to give them the other crap. And juice is very sugary, smoothie, you know, and milk, that's all very good, but it's different. I want water, right? So the idea really came about because I personally really like vitamin water and soda water, that kind of thing. So the idea is to create a slightly sweetened water with fruit juice. I mean, it's really very simple. Like I was making this at home.
You do anyway, yeah.
Yes, I mean, but it's just to getting the right flavor palette, making sure the sugar level is lower than, you know, X grams to keep it to that really low sugar base. Getting the colors right because we don't want any coloring. So it was how do you create it? It turned out to be actually a lot more complex than I imagined. So this water we developed, we started testing it in our shops within these kind of batches. And last year we kind of did our first trial batch, which is 2,000 bottles of these kind of little bottles that we created to sell. Because we have our own distribution channel. I think that's where our main kind of it was why it's easier for us to start something like this. I mean, the idea would be if this does then take the next step where we're making, 100,000 bottles, then we will have to go out into the other channels. But it's fine because with kids' drinks, it's a predominantly offline purchase and it's a purchase to quench the thirst. So it's very different from, say, your kids cream or your clothing where people are buying online. This is something you definitely buy in an offline situation, and that I know that very well. So this year we're looking at kind of readjusting the formulation a little bit. I wasn't quite happy with the packaging. It wasn't very eco-friendly, so we're looking at how to work with cardboard and pouches. So we're looking at shaping the packaging. That's why we haven't actually released it this year. It was supposed to be launched mid-year. We're kind of hosting our first Kids Spartan race. It's not actually called Kids Spartan, but the idea of it I got from Spartan. But we're creating kind of an event here in Beijing. It's like a family sports day, and we're hoping to launch it then. So that's all up in the air right now. Yeah.
That's very cool. Like, I mean, you're right. It takes a lot of effort and work to kind of get the product right, and then also get, like you said, the packaging right for kids so that they
Yeah.
want to actually drink this as opposed to all the sugary drinks that are out
So
there.
in terms of the what Zoe said, how does it integrate with Little Oasis? I think because Little Oasis, our values are very clear. We exist for the well-being of families. We talk about the well-beings of families as being our first and most paramount kind of central compass that we intend. That's why we exist as a brand, to have a whole new generation of Chinese families and kids who nurtured, in themselves and in their family environment, who have that perceived kind of happiness. And as part of that, physical happiness and well-being is very, very important. And a healthier kids drink fits with that value. So we always do go back to why we exist as a company and look at whether this makes sense for us to do. And yeah, because we're an offline business and it makes sense that we can sell it. That's why it integrates commercially. Yeah, and we have a lot of different channels that we can then open up if we do launch a product, because we've built such a great brand here and we work with so many different brands here in China. We have, so it'll be easier for us to launch a product this year.
Amazing. So just conscious of the time and thinking about wrapping up a few things, what would your top 5 tips for New Zealand businesses be for those looking to enter or grow in the China market?
Yeah. So I think I stressed this in the beginning, is one, having that very, very clear value and brand positioning that's actually going to speak local. So I think that's very important. It's speaking the local marketing messaging with local execution, and not just taking a New Zealand campaign or Western campaign and just plonk it in here, because those days are gone. That doesn't work anymore. You have to, because the game is so big, the next advice would be, the online kind of social media arena is this huge black hole that just sucks money, really.
Yeah.
So rather than going, I have to build, multi-channels, it's more appropriate to go niche and go small, I think, in the beginning, and go deep. That's why going back, that first advice of having that really clear customer profile, who your KOLs may look like, what do they aspire or inspire in your other consumers, what is that positioning, then allows you to figure out, if you are to invest deep into one channel or one platform, then which one is most appropriate, because they're all very different. We also kind of play in that space, not so much because we're not a social, because we're not selling a product yet, we don't need to invest so much in the social media platforms, but we do have presence in all of them, myself included. So it's really interesting to be in the different platforms and to see the type of clientele that's on it. The way you speak, say in your TikTok, how you will film and how you will close that loop in your purchasing is different from your Little Red Book, which is your kind of Instagram, from your Taobao, right? WeChat. And you really can't do all of them at once unless you're Frontier, unless you're a huge company. So then it's just figuring out which one do we start with and how do we really build a presence in this channel that is right for this product and brand. The next advice, which is harder, I think, for a New Zealand company, is to keep to China pace. And what does that mean? That means it is such a different rhythm in work, and especially when it comes to social media, right? Your social media posting, is it in line with the zeitgeist of what is happening right now here locally? Is it fast enough? Are you, I know a lot of companies I've seen that they're just not putting out enough SKUs to keep up with the rhythm of what the Chinese consumer wants. Yeah, and it's harder for New Zealand. I even had so even like a company like Nestle is struggling with keeping up with local Chinese startups in the food and kind of food arena. So they themselves now have to create an incubator to disrupt their own market, because the business as a whole is too slow. This is a China Nestle to keep up with the kind of entrepreneurship era that's here. So yeah, they've had to build their own incubator to kind of be like, okay, here, you are a startup now, do this. And instead of bringing out a product, you know, 1 SKU every year or 3 every year, they bring it out every quarter.
Yeah.
So you have to keep up with that. And that is somewhat, I think, challenging. It can be a lot more challenging. The next advice is really to look at it then as an opportunity potentially to build strategic partnerships here. So I think for the businesses that I think have done well here have all built local partnerships, whether they're strategic investment, whether it's a channel partnership, whether they've then built, you know, a China team here. You kind of have to do that. I've seen a lot of big brands that have distributors here, you know, 10 years ago that have all kind of bought back their businesses to really build a local team. And then the next advice is to really see if you can build some pricing advantages here in the long run, whether that's in supply chain or marketing or branding. So really, instead of looking at it as just a purely export market, which is probably what a lot of New Zealand businesses were looking at before, having more of a long-term strategy. It can start off as an export market, but can it potentially help you in the long run to you know, join forces and to be, you know, to really become an international market, like both, and how you work together with that. And I also think there's a lot of opportunities here for services and for technology, because I think predominantly we've always been viewed as, you know, New Zealand products, New Zealand produce, New Zealand agriculture. But I see there's a lot of need in tech. I think obviously China is way advanced and really advanced in tech, but there's also, you know, things in New Zealand we're great at, and it's having that exposure. I met a really great education company startup in New Zealand that's developing some really cool technology, you know, technology, services, higher qualification. All these things are really interesting. I think opening up your mind to the possibilities that could arise here, but obviously understanding the political challenges that, you know, making sure you're not, you know, you're not touching on anything that shouldn't be.
Not controversial. Thank you for that. That's some really, really interesting tips. I can see a question here as well from Peter, one of our other world-class New Zealanders who's on this call. And he asked a question around, who are your key customers? Are they expats or are they, you know, are they local? Who are your major customers?
It's very interesting. So when we've had our first location, my own presumptions of the final uptake of our membership, because we offer a membership basis, would be 50-50. So 50% expats and 50% local families who've had probably Western exposure. So they're willing to pay a premium for something that's more lifestyle based rather than your child is learning, you know, X, Y, and Z. And it was more or less that. And I think that was because even before I started my own business, I kind of had my own community, and I kind of predicted that would be kind of the initial split. But I think what's been really interesting over the last few years is, and especially I think by 2017, I quickly recognized that one, the number of expats were falling. So people weren't coming with their families, you know, they didn't want the air pollution here with their kids. So that's one that I couldn't really rely on being an expat business to succeed. So actually, I recognized that very quickly. By 2015, when we started, within 6 months, I thought, okay, this can't be an expat business because that base is narrowing and small. So to really grow here in China, or to have a good business in China, it needs to be a China business. And that's why I keep talking about speak local. Even my own marketing messaging, the way we're promoting the business, the way the spaces are designed and shaped have changed over the last 7 years. And now we are, I would say, a 90% China business and 10% expat business. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. That's amazing. I mean, I think we can quickly touch on this as well. I mean, we're running short of time, but he did also ask the question, is the curriculum a full-time basis, or is it just for casual play during the weekend? I think you touched on it lightly at the beginning. And how is it complementary to the normal kindergarten or curriculum in China?
Absolutely, that's a great question. So what the Te Whāriki has in New Zealand is this beautiful framework that anyone can use as an ECE, early childhood education care provider. And we use those principles and the strands that's laid out in the curriculum to develop our overall brand. So I often say that's kind of my Bible, because I use it to kind of as a guiding compass. So in terms of the actual curriculum within the classes, then we have over the last many years developed programs that complement the framework. So within our programs, so these kind of Mummy and Me classes, we have things like music, we have things like art, baby art, we have things like gym, we have cooking, what else we have? English and stories. So I have these kind of core curriculum base that run off a calendar year. So in that way, it is quite similar to a nursery where we have a calendar, with themes and then these subjects that run down. So you do need that to scale, because you need structure within your content in order to scale that part of the business. How does it complement? We say it's complementary to nursery. So our market is 0 to 6, and we're extending that to 0 to 8. But before 3, they're mostly at home. So then we are kind of their second home. That's how we are being used. It's a club, it's a second home. After nursery, they come to us on weekends, and sometimes after nursery finishes at 3:30, and working parents sometimes don't know what to do with their kids. So keep in mind, one of the main things here is that Chinese apartments are small. So we're not talking about New Zealand with your backyard, with your park right outside your doorstep, with a beach, 20-minute drive away. We don't have that here in Beijing. So you live in these concrete buildings, very small houses, no parks. So a part of the kind of role Little Oasis fills is that social environment, that play environment outside of your own apartment. So it complements the kind of the nursery system as you go through. We've also had to make adjustments in our curriculum. For example, English was a huge part of what we were doing, huge, and people loved it. And parents still want it, but it's no longer, we can't teach that anymore.
Yeah.
So that's been cut off more or less. I mean, we can still read to the kids in English and stuff, but it's no longer part of the core curriculum. And we've had to adjust for that. So we keep it flexible.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Jennifer. I think we're short of time now, but we really appreciate you sharing all of your thoughts, your journey, and insights into China today. Certainly some really great opportunities for New Zealand companies to enter the Chinese market. And I think for anyone who is considering it, we have lots of people like Jennifer on the ground in China. So if you are looking for advice or assistance, feel free to reach out to Kia, and we can put you in contact with amazing people like Jennifer who can provide practical advice on the ground. To everyone who came along and joined us today, thank you so much. We will be sharing a recording of the session on the Kia website later this afternoon, and feel free to also pass this on or share it with others who might find it useful. And as we mentioned, we run this series each month, so any feedback or suggestions of topics or themes that you'd like to hear about, please let us know via the short survey at the end of this session. So thank you so much for joining us. I see Jennifer shared her contacts as well in here in the chat. So thank you for joining us. Thank you, Jennifer. Have a great day. And we will speak soon. Harera.
Thank you. Yeah, just so there's some questions I didn't get to reply to, but yeah, so email is there. Unfortunately, my LinkedIn is blocked. The LinkedIn international version is blocked here, so I can't access it right now until I get my VPN, a newer VPN version up. So I just put in my email. If you have any questions, more than happy to help. Thank you, Kia, so much for this opportunity. And the Kia community has been really great, I think, in the last few years. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.